Crypto regulation is the topic of discussion across all levels of government in countries all across the globe. So, with the G20 summit coming this October, I felt it was important to keep you guys updated on the current state of affairs. And before the end of this video, that's exactly what you'll know. Stay tuned.
A battle is brewing in Washington over how to regulate the cryptocurrency industry, and industry leaders want to make sure they have a say. According to a recent report in the New York Times, some digital currency companies have hired lobbyists, lawyers, and consultants in an effort to gain greater influence over how much or how little their industry is regulated. According to the Times, the global value of all cryptocurrencies is more than $2 trillion. Eric Lipton joins me now. He's an investigative reporter for The Times and the author of that piece. Eric, welcome. Thank you very much for being with us. This really is a fascinating look at this still emerging industry. What are some of the key reasons regulators want to rein in the cryptocurrency industry?
Well, it started off as a really anti-establishment entity that, didn't want to have anything to do with regulation. But it's gotten so big, it now is worth more than all of the U.S. dollars in circulation globally. And it's so big that, to some extent, it's no longer even conceivable for U.S. regulators to say, we're going to ban cryptocurrency in the United States. But at the same time, there's all kinds of activities that regulators are worried about, including the possibility that people are using cryptocurrencies for money laundering and other illicit activities. So the U.S. government is trying to think about ways that it's going to regulate this sector, but the industry wants to do it in a way that doesn't harm their ability to continue to innovate and grow.
So then, on that note, tell us more about some of the key lobbying groups and firms getting involved in this. Who are they?
I mean, some of the biggest companies like Coinbase or Ripple are particularly active in lobbying, and then there's also, not surprisingly, this is Washington, there's all kinds of trade associations, the Digital Commerce, the Blockchain Association. There are new trade associations that are being created, it seems like, almost every week from the crypto industry. And then there's also, consultants that are working, not as lobbyists, but as they're trying to influence public policy by talking to reporters or talking to editorial writers. There's all kinds of stuff going on. It's just the kind of thing that I see when I can tell there's an industry that's got a lot of cash to burn and wants to flex its muscles. That's what's going on right now in Washington with this space.
So what are some of the challenges the cryptocurrency industry is facing right now as it tries to gain more influence in Washington?
They're concerned that there's a real conflict between different federal regulatory agencies like the Securities Exchange Commission or the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, and there's disagreement among the different federal regulators as to what the rules should be for cryptocurrencies. And the result is like uncertainty in the corporate space about what's legal and not legal. And that uncertainty is undermining, confidence in some of these cryptocurrencies, like XRP, which was a cryptocurrency that's Ripple introduced. And Ripple, for example, is being sued by the Securities Exchange Commission, which is alleging that it illegally offered its XRP and it's a security and not a currency. So there's a debate as to how to define these currencies. And based on those definitions, how they should be regulated. And whatever choices are made there have enormous consequences for people who are investing in these cryptocurrencies and for people who use them to transfer money globally.
So, Eric, where does the Biden administration fit into all of this? What can you tell us about how much support the industry has from the Biden administration and how that could play into this regulation fight?
What I think is happening is that, for a certain number of years, it's been about, that the federal government was pretty much like, let's sort of ignore cryptocurrency. It seems like it's a hobby for some people that are just investing in it. But now it's gotten so valuable, it's so big, and actually there are major corporations and even banks that are starting to embrace it for, moving money, transferring funds, especially cross-border funds. And I think that basically the Biden administration is the first administration that recognizes that it has no choice but to confront this. And so while it isn't yet clear exactly where the Treasury Department or the SEC or the Commodities Future Trading Commission is going to come down on it, it's clear that they're going to have to do something. And the Federal Reserve. And I think what you see is that there's at least the people who are in places of power now are slightly more savvy, like Gary Gensler from the Securities Exchange Commission. They really understand cryptocurrency. So there's a fair amount of optimism that at least you have people that understand what cryptocurrency is. And so maybe they'll make wiser choices in how they regulate it. But there's no question there's going to be a lot of fighting because the industry does not want stiff regulations. And there's no way that you're going to sort of move forward with with some regulatory answers unless it's going to be something that I think, honestly, the industry doesn't want.
Eric, help us understand this as someone who's examined this. Do you think cryptocurrency has any chance of replacing or becoming more prevalent than even traditional currency?
Well, I mean, we mostly here in our conversation have been talking about individual companies like Bitcoin or, XRP or FTX. There's all these different, platforms and companies that have both currencies and then platforms in which you can trade them. A whole other half of this debate is what's called sovereign cryptocurrencies. And like, for example, China, the Bahamas, Norway, the countries are starting to introduce their own cryptocurrency. So instead of paying with a dollar, a physical dollar, or even with a credit card in which a debit card, soon enough, the United States and the Federal Reserve is experimenting with creating essentially a sovereign cryptocurrency, like a federally sponsored cryptocurrency. That's a whole other half of this debate. And that debate is going to involve the big banks. They're going to be really intensely involved in choices made over what is the sovereign, the government-backed cryptocurrency going to look like. The federal government's going to have to embrace that as well. It's just a matter of time. And the Federal Reserve is already experimenting with that. But that's they're almost like two different categories of issues. One is the private companies that have created their own currencies. And the second one is how is the federal government going to do its version of a cryptocurrency, which is it's coming, just a question of when it starts in the United States.
Right. And to hear that other countries are already looking at this as well, it really sounds as though this is something that a lot of folks are going to have to learn a lot more about in the coming months and years.
We're in a revolutionary period.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Right now. We're in a revolutionary period right now in terms of, currencies and electronic movement of money. And, it's sort of like, the internet or the cell phone. 10 years from now, you're going to look back at this moment and we're going to have gone through a revolution in the relationship we have with our banks and how money moves. And it's going to be the biggest change in the space of money in 100 years, at least in the United States, maybe even longer. And the starting gun has gone off, and we are entering this period of massive transition.
Hence all of the jockeying for influence in Washington that you
Exactly.
just spelled out, and people trying to influence whatever it is that regulators may have in mind. Eric Lipton for us. Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gary, I wanted to pivot to the issue of crypto, something that you're very familiar with. You taught a whole class at MIT about crypto, and thus far the SEC has not gotten into the business of trying to regulate it. You've made some comments that you think that Congress ultimately will have to do it. What do you think, to the extent that it should be regulated, how would you do it? What are you thinking?
Well, so you're right. I was honored to teach not just one, but multiple levels of different courses in financial technology and in cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. I think to the extent something is a security, the SEC has a lot of authority, and a lot of crypto tokens, I won't call them cryptocurrencies for this moment, but crypto tokens are indeed securities. The prior chair had indicated that. The prior SEC brought numerous enforcement actions to sort of bring some of those security or investment contract tokens into the rules. But there are some like Bitcoin, if I can just focus on that, and that's about half of this $2 trillion asset class right now. It's a digital, scarce store of value, but highly volatile. And there's investors that want to trade that and trade that for its volatility, in some cases just for it has lower correlation with other markets. I think that we need greater investor protection there. And we don't have a federal regime overseeing the crypto exchanges. So if an investor wants to trade on that Bitcoin, understanding it's highly volatile, highly speculative, but if they want to trade on that we have in place some investor protection. And that's what I was saying, I think, is a gap in our system right now.
But it's a gap in our system that needs to be addressed by whom? Is that something that Congress will have to address? Because it's very possible Congress won't address it. And if they don't, is that something that you think you have an angle to address? Well,
I think that as it relates to Bitcoin, and I'm not speaking to all the other tokens right now, but as it relates to Bitcoin, while our sister agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, has some limited anti-fraud and anti-manipulation authority, there's no federal authority to actually bring a regime to the crypto exchanges. Whether it's stock exchanges or futures exchanges, there's regimes that were put in place in the 1930s to help protect against fraud and manipulation on the exchanges and protect the integrity of that. And I think that's really something that we'll be working with Congress and if they see fit to try to bring some protection for people that want to invest in this speculative asset class.